So today we're going to get the enemy ships to look at the player ship and shoot at it. Now they will continue to follow the ship even when they're behind, and we'll worry about that in another video, but I just thought it would be enough for us to learn today about how to get the ships to look at the player and continually shoot and follow. So I've made a number of slight changes to the scripts, and I'm going to chalk that up to be an example as there are more than one way to do things, and you just have to keep trying things till you actually find what you want. So one of the first things that I've done is on the player, I thought it was pretty shaky moving around with the camera as it was, and I want to do another video someday to actually refine the camera and the camera rig, but for right now, just to get less movement, I captured the global transform of my camera with this line in the ready function of the player script, and I locked it to that angle. So the camera doesn't actually move at all. It's just a little bit less shaky than what we had here. This is what it was previously, this commented out section. So another thing that I've changed is in the fire bullet signal, I've separated the origin and the basis that I want to start the bullets at. I grab the origin of the muzzle because I want it to spawn at the muzzle. That's the position I want. And I get the direction of my player. So I send both of those along to move the bullet. And the reason why I've done that is to make it easier for the enemy and the player to use the same script for bullets. I changed this line also to be not a translate function, but I am just adding to the origin. Since I changed this signal here and added more arguments, I have to change the signal or the function that the signal is pointing to. So another thing that I've changed is instead of preloading the bullet scene in the main game StarFox script, I'm going to actually load the bullet that I want in the player scene and send that along in the signal. And the reason why I'm doing this is I want to use the same signal, fire bullet, for both the enemy and for the player. And so in each signal, I'm going to send the position, the direction, and what type of bullet I want. So the reason I am having different types of bullets is I just simply wanted to have a different color for the enemy shooting. And this might seem like overkill for just the color. There are probably easier, simpler ways to just change the color, but I will want to have different properties for the enemy bullets compared to the player bullets. And so this is a good way to separate in the script what type of bullet should be shooting, but without having too many functions. Because I could have a fire bullet and an enemy fire bullet, but this way I can, in the StarFox, retain only one function that can process both of those. I was going to have inherited scenes be one of the topics for today, with the enemy bullet being an inherited scene from the player bullet, but I just had too many things to talk about this video, and so we're going to worry about that next time. Just make another scene, just like the basic bullet, and we'll just deal with that now and worry about inherited scenes in the future when we know more of what type of bullets we want in the game. So the enemy, if you remember, was very similar to our player. We're going to add a timer, and that timer is going to have a timeout signal, which will shoot, and we will wait every 2 seconds to shoot. And the muzzle I just put at the very front of the ship. So in the script, we have a lot of similar code to the player, except there's not going to really be any inputs. It's just going to follow and shoot all of the time. And so we, again, will have that fire bullet signal, and we're going to send along the bullet scene that we want. So we need to preload it here. I want to call the muzzle frequently, so I'm going to put that into a variable. And then I want to have a target, which is going to be the player, but we'll grab that in the ready function. So just like I did in the player script, I used my get nodes and tree game so I can connect my fire bullet signal. And then in a very similar fashion, I'm going to use that same function to grab the player and set that as my target. And that's very important because we're going to need the position of the player so we can look at it. And again, I'm just using this function in my prototyping because I don't like to have direct paths while I'm prototyping, and things are very clearly going to be moved around still in the game. So the enemy in the physics process is going to look at the player, and then we're going to just continually move them forward. So to aim the enemy ship at the player, we're going to use some very simple to use functions, even though the ideas behind them are actually pretty complicated. But like I said, it's only 3 lines of code and it points the ship at your player. So we're going to first make a desired rotation. And so basically this is just saying what would our rotation be if we were actually pointing at the player. So we're going to get the transform of the enemy. Remember, this is the enemy script. So we're going to do transform looking at the target, so the player's transform. And this is just saying that the y-axis is up. So our next variable, which we'll just simply put as a, is a quaternion. And oversimplified, quaternions are just a way to calculate rotation very smoothly and efficiently. We'll dive more into quaternions in future videos, but right now I just want to show you how easy it really is to use them. So the first thing that we're going to need is we need to, again, find what our rotation currently is. So you have to convert your basis into quaternion form, and this is how we will do it, is we will get our basis and we will get the quaternion form. That's basically what get rotation quat means. It's a built-in function. Then we will use slurp, which is just a fancy way to move our current rotation to the desired rotation. And this last number at the end is very important. It should be 1 or lower. If it is 1, then it will immediately look at where you want it, where you're telling it to turn to. If you make the number small, they'll have a lag time where they won't immediately point where you're telling them to go, but will slowly rotate to that position. Then we have to set the transform rotation to what we calculated. So like I said, quaternions, they are very complex, but in Godot, you just type in the functions and it just kind of figures it out for you. You don't really have to know how they work. And so this timeout function, like I said, we connected a signal, so every 2 seconds we shoot. And again, just like the player, we will send the fire signal with the position, the direction, and what type of bullet we want to shoot. So one minor difference that really doesn't do too much, but is just more for showing that it actually works, is I added an if body is in group player, I will print hit. And later on, obviously, we'll do some type of damage and health system. But I just wanted to see if the bullets were actually hitting the player when you get shot at. And this basic bullet script is attached to both the enemy bullet and the basic bullet that the player shoots. And what you end up with is an enemy that will rotate and shoot at you. And so I hope to make much more complex enemies in the future, but for now, this is a good starting point for your game to understand how you can get things to actually move and rotate the way you want them to. If you have any questions, since I've made things confusing by changing many little things in my game, uh, feel free to ask, and I love to hear from the people that watch my videos and what they want to see and what questions they have. So one minor thing I want to just say before we leave is, since the enemies are moving and sliding, if you go too low and the enemies continually try to move and slide into a static body or basically the land or the map, it will make your game immediately glitchy. So that is something we'll deal with in the future again, but I just want you to know that in case that happens to your game.